We are in an area where we see certain economies where there is a power shift. There are certain parts of the world where we now see that the technology is a lot more advanced. I think that some of this technology we have not even touched to the level. What generative AI has done is really just awoken us, and I think that there's much more to come. I just think that when I look at how we deal with transportation issues, social economic issues, food safety, etc., some of the aspects of what new technologies can bring is going to improve our society by leaps and bounds for sure.
Hey everyone, it's Tamara Thompson with Broadcast Your Authority. And I'm super excited because our next guest, he flew in a couple weeks ago, but all the way from Saudi Arabia. So quite the jaunt to be here visiting us, recording in Vegas. And today I'm going to have my co-host, Carrie, introduce our next guest. Carrie?
Thank you. So welcome, Lawrence. So Lawrence Eta is a global leader in digital transformation with over 20 years of experience. As the former chief technology officer for the city of Toronto, he developed a digital infrastructure that addressed the digital divide and improved service for 2.9 million residents. Lawrence also led a major digital strategy for Saudi Arabia mega project. An international best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and award-winning executive, Lawrence is celebrated for his work in smart city development, data analytics, AI, and digital policies. He has held senior roles in IoT and business process outsourcing, driving innovation in service delivery. Lawrence holds an executive MBA, a Master of Management, and a Bachelor of Science in Technology Management, underscoring his commitment to advancing technology in public services. That is a mouthful. It sounds like you've done so many amazing things, and technology is something that I think is so important for the future. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into what you do?
Oh, thank you very much. And it's great to be here to see all of you. Part of the story as well is that I've lived in a whole number of countries. And one of the aspects of that, when I moved as a young boy at the age of 11, I was born in Nigeria and I moved to the UK. One of the things I started thinking about is that sustainability of careers. Specifically, how am I going to ensure that I have a career that goes past? And computers, technology just seemed to be the perfect industry. And this was probably in the early 90s, before the internet. I'm showing a little bit of my age now. But I felt that was a career that was interesting, it was modernizing, and it could offer some level of value that could ensure that, number one, when I came out of university, I could get a job. So that was a practical way, but a sustainable way.
Yeah, I love that. What is your favorite thing? Like what, aside from the sustainability aspect, you've done so many amazing things. There has to be some kind of passion behind this. What fuels the projects that you've been on?
I think one of the components is that when I really went from private sector to public service is about the community. And I think that that's the great equalizer of technology and data, that really about how do we create a way to have good service, good experiences, a good way for level the playing field. As long as you have internet connectivity, and most of us, fortunately in the West do, it really has the great divide. And we saw that a lot during the pandemic, where people were working from home, where schooling was happening. And I love the passion of when people in various different societies from a diverse way can utilize technology to meet certain economic benefits, jobs, creativity, how we do that. So the passion of community and the humans are really something that drives the passion for me in terms of technology.
So, I have lived 2 years in Dubai, and you are in Saudi. So in UAE, we are all connected digitally. Like Emirates ID will tell you everything about you. But now I'm living in Toronto, and we also have a social security number, but everything is not digitized the same way as you would know Emirates ID would do. So, what is keeping that digital gap in Toronto, being a bigger city and a bigger country, but we are still not connected on one number, SSN?
I think that's a great question. One of the aspects that a lot of people would come to me and say, let's start talking tech. And for somebody who is the former chief technology of the city of Toronto, I usually would start on the humans and then I start on governance. And people, oh, this is a very boring subject. But actually part of what you're mentioning is the difference in certain Western cities as a federated model, as opposed to in the Gulf where you have more monarchy-based models. And what does that really mean? Well, decisions can ensure that are a lot more interconnected. So in this country, in the United States, you have a federal government, you have states, and then you have local governments. That's 3 levels of governments. So with that, for good reasons, they all have different authorities, accountabilities, powers, which means, great, you're representing the people, but you're not integrated. The information is not integrated. The ability to have a service is not integrated. The ability to share data and give good experience to the citizens and the residents are not integrated. So what that means is that you also have legacy, we call it technology debt, systems that were built many years ago. And with that, then the service experience, the residents and city experience becomes very difficult to interconnect that. And as well is that you're also working on a different system in terms of it's a democracy, which is good. But with that, you're electing every 4 years. So it's hard to bring long-term plans. You're not looking 10, 15 years. You're looking at the next cycle. But when you go to other parts of the world, there's certainly monarchy systems, they can invest for 10 or 15 years. There's decisions that is made more directional, which means is that you can have what you're commenting is a digital identity. When I go back to Saudi Arabia in the next couple of days, I can use my phone and press it and have a specialist doctor. I can choose the educational background, choose exactly what I want, and that can happen in minutes. That's the same thing in the Emirates. So it's the governance in terms of that system, and it's based on more of the system than it is actually of the tech, because the technology is out there and it can do all those things. That's the differentiation of what we're facing. It's really the governance model.
So as a fellow technologist here, and who has also been in the tech space for almost 2 decades now, I've seen the challenges of several tech generations. We're sort of falling behind here in the Western world compared to what I see a lot of things happening in other parts of the world. How will the Western countries sort of keep up with the massive speed of innovation and transformation we're seeing in all these other different countries?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what's the great thing in the Western countries is that we've got great research and development. So, I mean, that's renowned. I mean, we're in Las Vegas here in California. You've got Silicon Valley. There's multiple things that are happening. I was in Palo Alto seeing vehicles, autonomous vehicles, driverless cars. There's great aspects. There's also great research of academia. Toronto in itself, we have some of the greatest universities in Canada that's producing there. So I think from the research and the academia and that ability, it's absolutely there. The innovation, the ability for people to think differently, etc. I think what we need to do is have an honest conversation about how we're governed and have an honest conversation about are we using data and are we using technology to improve the experiences? So I'll give an example. I arrived in New York, as I said, I've been on a sort of 2.5 week sort of trip. And when I got to the airport, I'll give an example in New York. It's biometrics, it's my eyes. I never needed to bring my passport out because I'd already done a pre-qualifier. And part of that was that I already had, between Canada and the US, I'm a Canadian, there was already a pre-qualifier. So the government already knows about me. They know in terms of my security background. I want to speed through. As much as I like to spend time and chat and be at the agent, I want to ensure that at the end of the day, the quicker I'm in New York, the quicker I'm contributing to the economy and getting on with my life. So I think that way, the data is clearly being shared by 2 governments. They've pre-authorized me. Let's go and do that. So I think that those are examples. You have it in all other airports. Vancouver Airport has it. Various other airports have it. So I think when we focus on what is the service experience we're trying to create, is our taxes being used well in terms of creating that experience? You then have a different conversation with the public, and then you alleviate. But the public has to feel trust. The public has to feel that data and the information is being used. And I think that that's what they've done in other parts of the world. They have confidence. They feel that essentially my service experience is doing that. So I think that that's where we have an opportunity to really say, let's improve your experience. Let's make you get better, faster, and let's ensure that we're creating jobs and good economic benefits. And if you have that sort of conversation, it becomes more about let's ensure that the governments are integrated together, talking to one another, and the data is moving in a way with good cybersecurity that is providing the experiences for the citizens and residents. So I think that's where the opportunity lies. Of course, that's a difficult conversation, but it's a necessary conversation.
I love that you talk about that safety and trust, because being in the entrepreneurial world and on social media, one of the things that I see is a very controversial aspect of some people are really for it, some people are really against it, is this AI and AI taking over so many things, even creating videos or, I think, if I'm speaking correctly, that somebody could take my image and use my voice and say anything that they want me to say. So for people who don't really understand the technology aspect and where it's going and how to keep that safe, what would you share with them regarding the advances in technology that we have in regard to safety?
That's a great question. When I was in Toronto, one of the aspects, we just had a really large tech company that had come to Toronto. Toronto has a very beautiful area called Waterfront. It's a beautiful landscape. And we had a really big tech company who wanted to develop that. So they came with the best tech. They came with the most, futuristic. But the conversation was really about how you bring the community along with that. So one of the things that we did was form something called the Digital Infrastructure Strategic Framework. It was based on guiding principles. And I state this as principles, not stating regulations, because if you're an innovator in the tech space, etc., there's always this big debate about regulations. And that's important. But what it did was that it said that let's create a community, let's go to the citizens and residents and ask the feedback. And what they gave us in that feedback, they wanted trust and confidence. They wanted government to ensure that government was looking after their data. So we built this area that said every tech that we're bringing in, and in this case, it's AI, it could be blockchain, it could be IoT, it could be a whole series of other things. That's number one, is it creating social, economic, and environmental benefits? It's important. The next component, is it ensuring that it's hitting diverse and inclusive communities? So therefore, there isn't bias, is not having people left behind. Is it ensuring that our democracy and transparency are still going to be represented? Misinformation, deep fakes, etc. Is it ensuring the intellectual property is staying with government so that essentially the taxpayer can feel that some of those ideas are going to benefit? So there was a whole series of principles that were led there, which ensured that the private sector, private-public partnership, did not feel that there's big bad government trying to come down. And there was essentially a dialogue, a collaboration, a partnership that was built. So I think when it comes to AI, it's to be able to say that there's always nefarious reasons that can be used in any technology. When internet started in the mid-90s, they could always there. But at the end of the day, if government can have a way to have trust in belief by being transparent, then essentially you have a system that sort of puts that in front of place. And I'll put a statement out there that some may actually put out there. If government start publishing key performance indicators, what's your service delivery?
Right.
What are the things that your taxes are being done today? If you actually publish that once a quarter, once every few months, you're suddenly becoming transparent. Here's where the mandate has been selected by the politicians. Here's how the public servants are delivered. So if you don't have that dialogue with the community, especially coming from cities, then what you've done is that you are getting into a cycle that people are saying, I don't know what's happening with my data. I don't know the benefits they're being given. There's some sort of secret viewpoint, and that creates a level of lack of transparency. So the framework in Toronto is what we use. We're setting some of those principles that allowed you to build some of that trust.
Amazing. I like that.
So I believe that internet was huge. It transformed the world. But I also believe AI is going to be even bigger. Mm-hmm. How do you believe that AI will impact the digital transformation that is ongoing around the world now for a lot of different cities?
That's very good. I mean, at the end of the day, if we look at some of the technologies out there, do we want to have high valued work for high pay? There's a lot of automated services. Do I really want to spend time checking my grammar, or can I go into a specific technology and make sure that it can check the grammar for me? And then I'm focused on content creation. Which part of the task do I really want to have automated? And that's important, But with that, there's a transition of jobs. There's no question that the way that the labor market is going to have to move. But what you're having essentially is that you're having a knowledge-based economy. That's usually the phrase that's required. You still need some of the manual aspects, but let's move that to artificial intelligence. Let's raise the awareness and the qualifications of our people into building what you have a digital economy. So there's some mundane tasks that none of us really want to be. I think AI can take care of that. I think AI can give us. But there was recently where I was speaking to a particular professor, and I looked at AI in a different way in a conversation. There's enough data, and I'm going to give an example. If we have, for example, if we leave, it's going to say sometimes weather forecasts. There's a lot of data that talks about the weather forecast. Maybe not so much rain in Las Vegas, but in parts of the world, there's still quite a bit of rain. We have a lot of data that says that. Is it going to rain? We hear it on the news. But that is about forecasting. It's about forecasting about what the weather is. But one of the aspects that is still on left is that humans still need to make decisions. So if you're going out, are you going to pick up the umbrella? If the weather forecast says there's a 60% probability that's going to rain, it's still going to be up to us to make a determination. Is my hair going to be, messed up if I don't take an umbrella? Is my lovely jacket? That is still human intervention. There isn't enough data yet for us to make that. So the fear of what AI is, there's still human decisions. We have leaders all across the world. We have political leaders. We have leaders in business. Humans are still looking for the leaders to come on camera and said, I used information to help me make this decision. Because they're not looking for some robot or some bot to say, you made a decision here. It's still looking for leaders. And I think that by having that viewpoint and keeping the sentiment calm and letting people breathe, and say humans still have value here. And that value means is that we can have all the feed of the data we want, but somebody, a decision maker, has to say, I made this decision because of this reasons. And I think that that's the conversation on artificial intelligence. It will improve our lives, but it's certainly not going to ensure that we are extinct. And this doom and fear, we just have to relax a little bit and understand where in society there's benefits, but recognize there are bad actors, there are threats everywhere, but no difference to other technologies that have come in there. But it's definitely a transformational, huge piece of any other technology we've seen in the past 20 years since the internet, for sure.
I was just curious, what do you think do you always feel like the human leader is going to always have to step into that conversation and, make people feel comfortable with AI? Or do you feel like there's going to be a certain point where we're just going to be watching a show and it's going to be AI and we're just going to trust and believe it?
I think that it's going to challenge humans to be a lot more prescriptive and intelligent in the decisions we make. And in all due respect, it's going to make us more intelligent.
It's needed.
That's right.
Needed.
Because if I can go and now say the information you're giving me is just not accurate because I've used various data sources to confirm what you're saying is not accurate, I need that human to give me confidence to be able to say, oh, I see how you've used technology to connect the dots. So the viewpoint is that, are we going to need as much management? Maybe not. Are we going to need more levels? Maybe not. But we're still going to, as far as I'm aware, we still have to need relatively a pilot. Some of us flew here. I'm going to be taking a long flight. I still want that pilot.
Would you get on that AI?
That's right. I still want that
pilot.
Would you get on an AI flight?
As long as I knew there was a pilot in backup that could take the wheels and maybe make some certain decisions and come up and give me confidence. So I say that we still have value in this world. We just have to redefine our skills. It could be the art of communication. It could be the art of more analytics. It could be the art of us using our brains to engage and not maybe sleepwalking through decisions. I think it's going to challenge us more to think before we act.
I think it keeps us on our toes.
Exactly.
Yeah, it makes us step into our power to be able to really use your critical thinking, really get into what you're doing, really assess what you're seeing in order for you to step into your power, not give it away to the AI or be afraid it's going to take it away from you.
100%, 100%. So there's value for us. We're going to need education. We have probably courses or educational that we've not even thought about that we're going to need create. And more importantly, our EQ and IQ are going to come closer together. Empathy and the ability to use data to ensure that we are balanced in a social construct will be a lot more prescriptive. It's not the fact that the AI told you, but there is a huge piece. When I was in the private sector, your top line and bottom line growth, profit and loss. Did you make money or didn't you make money? That's it. Right. In public service, our business model isn't about making money. It's about ensuring safety, security, making sure their comforts. We saw that a lot in the pandemic. That takes a humanity. So I think your EQ will be a lot more tested with the growth of AI. Are you making those decisions because a robot told you? Or are you using some of the elements that make us humans, our feelings, our sensitivity, our breathing? And I think those sometimes are the uncomfortable but necessary conversations we need in all levels of society.
This is actually very relatable because coming from a wellness background, I meet a lot of people on a daily basis who like to Google their symptoms and try and understand beforehand what's really wrong with them and then overthink it. Instead of, understanding what could go better, they overthink whatever the symptom list they have received. Also, when we do yoga or mindfulness practices, there are always contraindications. So there are steps what everybody can do, but there are steps what you're not supposed to do as per your symptoms. And when we go by AI, nobody talks about contraindications. You just ask, I am feeling my heart racing, and you will get the steps what you can do, but they will never tell you what you should not do at that point in time. So I am relating this question to education because the more people are using this, where they're realizing there are no contraindications and people are just using whatever is available according to the prefix data in AI, I think the counter side is that more people are coming up with mind courses. So neuro-linguistic programming or neuro-emotional programming, where people are also making the human stronger, so to compete with the AI at the given time. So, now we hear a lot on social media that how to master your mind and how to develop more emotional well-being. So do you think this bridge will ever get connected, or AI will always have an upper hand because it's backed by data? And
I think it's a balance. Let me bring a bit of humanity. My home country, I was born in Nigeria, and I was there in May after 20 odd years. Nigeria is the largest country in Africa, about 210 million people. There's talk that it will actually be almost the size of the US. A lot of history, Western peace. One of the aspects, just to link in bridging your question, is that I saw driving there, my family was there, and I saw a group of people who didn't have all the tech and all the sort of information we have, but they were the happiest, they said. They were young people smiling. And I said to myself, okay, what is so different in that respect? Some of the economic aspects in this area may be challenged, etc. But what they were also utilizing was the fact that they were using their minds to say that how can I keep myself still grounded, even though some of the other benefits that I think I may have are not there. So that comes to the mind. Well, how do you get that? Well, psychology is still important. Family communities are still important. Where the grandparents are still community. In the Western society, we have a view, we go to college for those of us who are fortunate, and then you leave. The community is broken down. So if you still keep communities together and you still have that closeness, technology and AI can help you there, can help you connect. Absolutely. But we still need to be with people. So in terms of there, it comes with the mind. Should I make a purpose effort to contact my family, to ensure that I am still connected? That is a mind action. That is an AI telling me, well, remember to speak to your partner, your family, your wife, your spouse, your whoever it is. It's still me taking a conscious piece and says, I need to still be connected. I still need to ensure that my happiness and my wealth is my accountability, no matter how much of the data. So in your point, I have a hope for humanity. And maybe I'm a hopeful tech enthusiast, but I still think we're still in the business of people, and the technology is there to enable and to help us to have a better quality of life.
I just want to add something, and I have a question in the end of my statement here, but I've seen how much we have changed. Like everyone showing up here today have used AI probably 5 to 10 times just by showing up here today. You just don't know it yet. I realize my own pattern. I stopped using Google. I go to ChatGPT or Claude or other, and I go there first. So think of the whole ad industry that will change for Google, all these other things. I drive a self-driving car. I always use it. I almost never drive anymore. So when someone asked about, would you trust a pilot? I would absolutely trust AI to fly the plane as long as, like you said, Lawrence, there is a backup should something go wrong. But my question is, how do you predict the future? So you're very involved in technology. You see what is going on. You have seen how much have changed in AI in the last just 12 months. Where are we 5 years from now?
I think we are in an area where we see certain economies where there is a power shift. There's certain parts of the world, I'm a global person, the continent of Africa, places in Asia, where we now see that the technology is a lot more advanced. And I see that now there's a conversation that will happen that will bring some of these new economies to a level that is saying, the futuristic, I think that we're in a time whereby there was a time where I thought, flying taxis, I could never imagine that. But we are a lot more closer. There are people experimenting with some of those technologies out there in terms of the ability to deal with congestion. And some of us come from cities where it's extremely congested, environmentally issues, etc. So, you're starting to look up into the sky. So I see that. I see a lot of satellite technologies in terms of space. People should really check out some of the space areas in terms of economic growth. A couple of years ago, I was with an area of an organization that builds space in terms of space technologies for countries, bringing broadband connectivity, which is specifically internet connectivity, to bridge the digital divide. So I think that we're just on the cusp. But I think that what is really interesting is that some of these economies that sometimes people think that they are developing countries, etc., I think they are on the frontier to really leapfrog because they haven't come from that technology debt. They're just leaping right to the end. And why is that? Because their stating is that we have to transform our economies. We have to ensure that we have a young generation of 30-year-old people. So I think that some of this technology, we have not even touched to the level. What generative AI has done is really just awoken us. And I think that there's much more to come. And I'm quite excited to see how it develops from that. But, I just think that when I look at how we deal with transportation issues, social economic issues, food safety, etc., some of the aspects of what new technologies can bring is going to improve our society by leaps and bounds for sure.
What, being global and going to different countries that you've seen, what have you seen that's more advanced, like in Asia or other countries than the United States?
I'll talk on a technology that where it's going to be practical, and I think the audience will get that. I've seen digital identity on steroids in Saudi Arabia.
I've seen so many different types of like shorts, reels, TikTok videos, and
Totally.
there's like all this different technology that I'm like, why don't we have that in the US?
Totally.
yet?
So, when I come here, I have to remember to maybe get a boarding pass in the ticket just as a backup. I'm so used to not having paper after almost 2 years in the Middle East that I have to rewind myself as soon as I hit North America. I see it. And why is that? Is because things are interconnected, as was mentioned before. And so I think that what does that do? It gives me better service. In fact, I don't even want to use a computer. I just want to use my app. Mm-hmm. Everything I just need to use my phone. The most important device is my phone. It's not actually the PC or the computer anymore. And I need it all interconnected. So I'll give an example. I've got a great story. I arrived in Saudi Arabia and we're talking about, and I was going back, I arrived there in January of 2023. I was going then to bring my spouse who was in Canada at the time. So usually we have this land and conquer strategy. I go overseas, I land, I make sure that the home is set up. Then I go and I bring, my family across. So I was leaving and I got to the airport, and part of it is that when you have a sponsorship in terms of your visa, there is an exit entry visa sort of process that happens. So here I haven't seen my spouse for 3 months. I arrive in the airport. I'm all excited. I've got this 20-hour journey that I'm going to go through Frankfurt, go through Toronto to get to Winnipeg, Manitoba. I get to there, I scan my passport, and they said, no, the system hasn't cleared. There's a particular button that hasn't been pressed, so you don't have the authorization to sort of clear your visa are coming back. So I'm sitting there thinking of the North American viewpoint. The government agency is shut. It's 11 o'clock at night. There's no way that I'm going to be able. So I'm sitting there a bit distraught. I'm going to miss my flight. And they said, just move to the side. So I called a colleague. It happened to be at a stage in terms of they were celebrating Ramadan, and then in Ramadan is the fasting period. And so sunrise, they were, out there. So I get my colleague at 11 o'clock at night, and he says, hello, Lawrence. I said, look, I did everything right. I can't exit. He said to me, relax, breathe in, relax. He said, just give me a few minutes. I said, what do you mean a few minutes? He said, just take it. Just, Mr. Lawrence, just relax. Just sit in the corner. I'll call you back in 5 minutes. He calls me back in 5 minutes and says it's done. Oh, I said, what's done? He said, oh, somebody just didn't press a button, but because we're all interconnected in government, go forward, you should clear. My nervousness has been there thinking of my sort of North American standards. There's no way that information has got to government. I went to the front, the person scanned my passport and said, have a nice day.
Wow.
So when we talk about in terms of interconnected within government agencies, it was because the process, somebody hadn't followed the last process, but the data was shared. What was that? Service? Security was good because it was still my information. So I think that when you start being in some of these other parts of the world and seeing how their service experience is transforming to the viewpoint, another component I think is very, very important is how do we engage the dialogue? If we use certain language, we scare the public. So we need to use language that stays to the viewpoint is that if your service experience. So on some of these parts of the world that I'm visiting, I'll give an example. I went to Japan recently. The cleanest, most smartest cities out there because they're interconnected and they have a cultural aspects of everybody believing and understanding that the ability of technology is for the greater good. And in the Western world, sometimes we hold back on that, and sometimes it's justified. So I'm hopeful that in that respect, but I will still always ensure that when I travel back, I have my physical boarding pass, because just in case that when I scan my phone, the system isn't working, and I don't want to get a whole conversation with the agent is, where's your physical boarding pass? But it's all in our phones. The future is all in one device that is very powerful, and we just need to leverage it to the best of our ability.
And you recently wrote a book.
I did.
You have a brand new book out. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? It's called Bridging Our World.
Bridging Worlds.
Bridging Worlds. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Bridging Worlds, Technology Leadership in the Public Service. So I started writing this book as a memoir when I sort of left Nigeria as a young boy. My parents were going through a divorce period, and then I moved from there to the UK, etc. And when I was growing up, there weren't a lot of leaders that looked like me in leadership positions, diverse people of color, etc. And I thought, if I'm a young 11-year-old and I needed a playbook, I really wanted to write a combination of a memoir about how I came into the technology sector, how I then ended up being in this, great opportunities. Who were the mentors, the sponsors, the families, the community? Because you don't do it alone. There's a lot of people, the family members, my spouse, my community. And then to have each chapter that really talks about how technology can make a difference in public service. So I wrote this book. It's called Bridging Worlds because I've lived in 5 countries. I've lived in the UK, I've lived in Nigeria, I've lived in US, Canada, and now Saudi Arabia. So I wanted to bridge the different worlds. And then I wanted to talk about to inspire others that the public service still has value in terms of we need great minds to be in the public service. We need great leaders. So Bridging World is a combination of a memoir. It talks a lot about my time leading Toronto, 2.9 million people, about over 20% of Canadian GDP to a very difficult time in that. And it has certain methodologies that I built in terms of how to lead. And one of the most important thing was that I made sure my senior team, which was deputy chiefs, were all women of color. There's a whole posture of me of diversity, equity. I was told by the recruiters, we can't find certain women in tech. I said, that's not true. So, I had a diverse group and really sort of empowering and pushing and having mentors. And each chapter has lessons learned so that it's a memoir, it's a bit of a story, but it's practical. And that's what bridging walls of technology leadership in the public sector. So thank you very much to a whole group of people, my publisher who's based out of California, my spouse who had to, contribute in terms of, it takes a whole community, and that's what the book is reflected. So thank you very much.
That's exciting.
I love that. Oh, well, I appreciate you so much just for flying clear out here and joining us today. I could continue the conversation so much more into this technology aspect. Where can people, find you, connect with you, learn more about that and your book? Could you share that with our audience?
Absolutely. LawrenceEta.com is my website. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. My first name, Lawrence, last name, Lawrence Eta. I also have a newsletter that's bi-weekly, or as in the US, twice a month, if we use that sort of piece, Instagram and social media, but LinkedIn and my website at lawrenceeta.com. And thank you for the opportunity. It's great to be here and spend time with all of you in this audience.
Well, we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And those of you that are watching, be sure to subscribe, like the show, leave a comment, let us know how we're doing, and we appreciate you. And we'll see you in the next episode.